Hey guys, welcome back. BDCKR here. We're back with Season 6, Episode 9 of our weekly P&Q&C&A&T videos. That stands for podcasts, questions, comments, answers, and talking. The P stands for podcast because this is going to be distributed both here on YouTube, and by here on YouTube I just say that because that's where it seems like the vast majority of you are tuning in.
Or here on the podcast where people are listening to this.
Yeah, and you can check that out in the description. We're on all the major podcasting platforms, including a little bit more recently, Apple Podcasts.
Right.
So, there we go.
And we were thinking of maybe putting some of the previous seasons up available as an archive, and let us know if it's worth it, because we've got all the audio tracks for everything, really.
It wouldn't take too much effort to kind of put them up there, but it definitely would take some. So if
the effort would be to put the description in.
That's true, yeah. So if that's the kind of thing or just upload them like one after another, because I think you can only do one at a time and you have to wait.
Oh, okay.
But if that's something that you're interested in at all, if you're a podcast listener and you say, yeah, you know what, I would probably be able to binge some old episodes, let us know. And if there's enough support for that, I guess, like, if we're looking at ratio of people who listen to our podcast, like 3 people, if 3 people,
that would be like 25% of our audience.
Wow,
that would be huge.
But we'd be willing to put that up there.
Yeah. Oh, so all right, before we get into the official questions, because part of it is the talking stuff.
Yeah.
And I want to maybe finish up with something that we sort of started.
We're going to make some comments of our own.
Yeah. All right. So sometimes when you get into discussions and arguments, it's not necessarily an argument because there's that negative connotation that something bad is going on. It's when you have discussions where you disagree with people. I guess so. All right. So that's actually a good point, because I found this term called Gish gallop. And I found the definition of it, and I'm going to read it here. So, Gish gallop is a technique named after the creationist Duane Gish, who employed it, whereby someone argues a cause by hurling as many different half-truths and no-truths into a very short space of time so that their opponent cannot hope to combat each point in real time.
Oh, yeah.
This leaves some points unanswered and allows the original speaker to try and claim his opponent lacks the counter-arguments.
You know what, that's interesting. Actually, recently a friend sent me somebody talking about somebody who was anti-abortion talking about it, and they sent it to me just because they were mad about it and the way that it was written, and it was really frustrating to read it, because whether or not you agree with them, some of the points that they were making were just totally half-baked and nonsensical.
Right.
So they had a point that from a scientific perspective, it's been known for a very long time that from the moment of conception, fetuses are genetically unique. Like, that was an indication that they were living, and also that they were a unique collection of cells, were the two different phrases.
Aren't snowflakes unique too? I mean, the uniqueness is a funny kind of thing to hang your hat on.
They were saying genetically unique, and it's like, well, I mean, like, almost anything is genetically unique. Anything that has any mutations, pretty much anything that has any DNA is genetically unique, especially if it was created not as like a clone of something, but as like an actual offspring. So
but even a clone wouldn't be unique, because there's the epigenetic material.
That's true, and there's mutations. So literally any living thing is genetically unique to some extent from every other living thing. Right. And so that argument that for some reason having a slightly different set of DNA, and then that it was also a unique collection of cells, which is also, again, that applies to anything. Nothing isn't a unique collection of cells. No 2 stalks of celery are exactly the same, right?
Especially, I guess possibly if it's asexual reproduction, but there's a chance, isn't there?
I mean, you're talking about a unique collection of cells. And when you're
talking about something
at a microscopic level, there's so many cells that everything's a unique collection of cells.
Right.
No two.
So, all right. So here, I guess the point I wanted to make when I found this, and I thought it was relevant, not because I feel like anybody's specifically doing this, because this is a bad faith kind of way to argue, right? It's that sometimes a discussion can feel like that, especially when we do it. When it's asynchronous, right? Where somebody asks a comment,
point response, yeah.
And when there's a ton of points all at once, then it gives you that same kind of feeling that you were saying when somebody passed it along to you because they were frustrated with it.
Yeah.
And it's nice to be able to put a name to it, because it's the same way that, I mean, it's shorthand where you don't actually have to unpack it the same way. It's like doing something from first principles versus doing it when somebody's actually come up with. You don't have to recreate the Pythagorean theorem to show that this side is a certain length. It's a theorem. It's been proven, and then you can just use it.
Yeah. it's interesting because the actual opinion piece, the main point they were making is people were talking. There was a bunch of Catholic school, like I think it was like middle school or like high school age boys were bussed out to protest on abortion rights.
Yes.
And so people were saying, I mean, 13-year-old boys really aren't the people that we need to be asking about abortion.
Yes.
And they were trying to argue that the opinion of 13-year-old boys actually was quite relevant.
What?
They were just saying like, oh, you're trying to take away other people's rights by saying that they can't participate in this discussion.
Listen, I think they need to be aware of certain things, like to be prepared, like consent. Yeah. But I don't think they need to be advocates or leading the argument because they're not exactly what I call stakeholders.
Having been a 13-year-old boy, I can say with a pretty high degree of certainty that my opinion on abortion at that time did not matter and should not have been taken into account. I don't think it was a negative one. I think I probably would have been like, yeah, no, it's fine. But I still don't believe that my opinion would be valuable or useful.
I think also, as having been a 13-year-old boy, but much longer time ago, and also raised as a Catholic, I was actually indoctrinated in a Catholic grade school and high school.
Yeah.
That
maybe we can not say indoctrinated. That's perhaps a little harsh.
But when
separating it from potential accuracy.
So, but the problem, I guess, is that a lot of organized religion is like that, right? Like they expect you to be participating even from a very, very young age, so that when you're baptized before you're really aware of anything, at least in Catholic faith, you have the first communion before you're really capable of understanding stuff, and then they have confirmation. But to say, okay, so now that I've had a chance to really think about things, I agree. But the confirmation is supposed to happen, what, like grade 6? Which is, what, 11? Or maybe I'm getting it wrong, but somebody correct me because it's been a long time. Yeah. I think that I guess the point remains, I agree. I think my understanding was not sophisticated enough, and I was able to parrot some of the things that I was told, but I couldn't really, if I was asked to deviate from the script, stick to the script, makes me think of Sorry to Bother You. Okay, so
that was such a weird movie.
It was not what I expected.
It was good. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, there's some parts that were, oh my god. It reminded me a lot of Get Out. But all right, so we're really in the weeds. Okay.
But I think the point that you make is a good one too, about especially when there's a group of kids at that age and they're showing up to something that they probably don't have a complete understanding of, and that their understanding of it, because they're being shipped there by like a Catholic high school, their understanding of it is actually very specific and also controlled.
This is where enunciation matters. Shipped. SHIPPED.
Yeah. So the idea that their opinion is useful here would actually, I would argue, I would be more likely to agree with them if their opinion came from personal research and wasn't just a reflection of the views of the institution that they grew up in. Because they're not actually expressing their own opinion. They're expressing the opinion of the high school that is bringing them there, to, I think it was protest, right? So, they're not actually even necessarily, they're expressing what might be in the moment their own views, but they're not organically their own views.
Right. So maybe I've got something else that I wanted to talk about, but maybe we should give a chance to our viewers to respond to their comments first and bring it back, because then we can do more injustice stuff, because there's something else I wanted to talk about recently, because I've been watching some more TV.
Okay, so we'll get to the first question then here.
Yeah.
Our first question comes from GMDCostaRica NB, and they ask, at what level should I start promoting Jessica Cruz and have the best damage and life stats? Please help me, guys. And so that's good. We're actually talking about injustice for once.
Yes. And there's certain principles I think we take for granted sometimes because we've been playing it for so long. Because
we'll give the Cliff Notes answer, the really quick answer. Same stats. Once you reach your endpoint, you're going to have the same stats no matter what. There's no issue. There's no order of operations that gives you better, bigger numbers.
Right. Each one is a specific calculation. You get to whatever path you chose, if you were at 50-7 or 60-10,
Yeah.
exactly the same.
But it's not quite that simple. I mean, on a base level, it's that. But, as we've learned, the more we've played, obviously, having people at lower elite levels is sometimes better. The thing that you can actually personally control, because levels just go up when you play, is how high they are eliteed. And so for online play, that actually is a meaningful consideration.
Right. So that's the other breakdown, right? So there's online play and offline play. So if you plan on using Jessica Cruz for finishing the offline game, it doesn't really matter. Crank her up to the highest promotion, the highest elite level that you can.
Yeah.
Highest level. And
to do it fastest, you want to elite her whenever possible, because that means you're going to get further in, get more XP, and
right. That's
not
an
slow down
point.
nearly as quickly.
Right, because if you actually promote first before you level her up, then the early fights that you're getting through to get through the offline play, you'll get more experience out of it.
Yeah, they're quick, they're easy, you can progress further. So if you're doing offline play, definitely elite first, as long as you're not in a position where you can start a grinding team to level up your characters.
And if you have no intention of playing her in multiplayer and you only want to use her for the offline, that's easy, but that's not true for most people, right? So you hinted at that already, where if, because of her stats, you could actually get maximum battle points on a team with her without having her higher than, I think, maybe Elite 5. Mm-hmm. And she would still be really, really good.
And so you sort of want to limit her to what the level of your other best gold characters are for your online play. And I guess just going back to the point of how they kind of grow and get better as they level up. One of the things is that, like, bronze, silver, and gold characters, and I'm assuming metal characters too, although I haven't actually looked at that, all gain stats in different ways as they level up.
Right.
So bronze characters tend to be pretty balanced.
You mean like between attack and health? Like
between attack and health, yeah. Which makes them sort of a glass cannon, because it turns out that balance isn't actually super...
I actually like that, though. I mean, it really depends on how you want to play, right? Because to me, I would actually rather have an attack heavy kind of team. If I'm going to have, you know, like how in D&D where you have stats and if you apportion them in different characteristics, I'd rather have
you want builds. You're just talking about the RPG idea of a glass cannon build.
Perfect, yeah. And so I want damage to be fast. I don't want a long fight. And with a team of 3, if I make a mistake on one, any one of them I want to have that kind of high damage potential, so I'm not lingering. And the longer the fight drags on, the more chance there is for the abilities and the tag-ins and the specials of the other team to end up hurting you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think that's our main points.
Oh, but I mean, we're taking for granted this too, right? That with the higher up you go, health actually increases more than attack.
Yeah.
Which is why the bronze has more attack than health. It goes a little bit more towards health in silver and goes the most towards health in the gold.
Yeah, and when we say most towards health, we mean most proportionally. It's not like gold characters have lower attack than silver characters.
Oh, right. And it's not their base. It's as they progress, as they get higher and higher. So sometimes it's actually not a bad idea if you like to play them that way, but it also means you have to take into account what other characters you want to play them with.
Yeah.
So that goes towards team balance, because you could have a really unbalanced team where there's one guy really strong, 2 guys really weak, and that way the team that you're facing, that the 3 characters tend, if they're more balanced, and they tend to be
a little bit weaker.
Yeah, but then if you make a mistake and your one guy gets knocked out by accident, then your game's over, right? Especially
by the end fights where you are probably fighting people who are all about as good as your best guy.
Yeah, and when you're facing a team that's damaged over time, really, it won't matter that you've got one really strong guy. Yeah. It's going to take out their health. And if you're stuck down to one, you can't tag in or out, then you're going to have struggle. And then it becomes a matter of, all right, so what battle point target are you looking for? And for a lot of the golds, you don't have to max them out completely to get the maximum battle points per fight.
And you also get to have more interesting fights down at that level. They're a little bit easier because of the gear. They can get a little bit harder when you compare to just playing at the absolute maximum, because you can actually get outstripped in terms of stats a little bit. You can you can fight battles that are a little bit more unbalanced the further away from the top you are.
Right, because the stats, like the first fight of a 7-fight ladder, typically the first 1 or 2 is about the same level as yours.
And they're pretty easy.
And they just keep on going higher from that. So you're right, when you're max, there can't be that big a differential, right? They can't just keep on advancing. When you're not quite max, then the last, fight 6 or fight 7, they can really do a number
So
on
they're
you.
harder fights, but they're not necessarily longer fights. Because when you're maxed out, when you're really up at the top, everybody has like Astro Harness, and the fights tend to be pretty slow and drawn out. And the enemy gear tends to be a little bit better optimized for playing and winning defensive battles.
I mean, you just saw that now with our splash damage tag in tag out team, right? That it was relatively fast. You don't face as many Astro Harness, and when you get to the high levels, right, you're definitely seeing it a lot more almost every fight. And I think that answers the question. Really, like, I think the original question was, it's hard, it was a little bit ambiguous, but it was, how do you get to make sure she gets the
How do you get the best stats for Jessica Cruz? Like, what do you, how do you level her up? And
so what we're answering is what actually are her best stats, and that sort of depends on what you want to do with her.
Yeah, and so, and the short answer is just do whatever. It doesn't, like, your end point is going to be the same. If you look at the same elite, same level, there's no way to get different stats other than augments or your, what's the 10% boost support cards?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, I was trying to think of the name, because I never have to consider those anymore. Those just have kind of...
Because they've been there for so long, we're not accumulating anymore.
They've sort of dropped off my radar.
Yeah.
So, there we go. And then I think we'll do maybe one more question before you get to your talk about TV.
Yeah,
or
okay,
do you want to do it now?
Yeah, no, we'll do a few more Injustice stuff. I think that's we've been lacking that a little bit. We've gotten sidetracked a little bit, and I feel like these are definitely interesting questions. It's hard to get interesting questions because we've been playing it for so long. And yeah, for sure.
Or this is not a question, actually. This is more of a comment. But this comment comes from TRUEthatguy, and they say there's still a working credit glitch. And then they go on to mention a technique that requires two devices being logged into both devices simultaneously, and basically buying a pack on one device and getting the pack rewards on the other device without losing the money.
Right. And so, I mean, this is a bit of a long history, and maybe we need to be doing this in our recap video, because our recap video, our weekly recap video, seems to be getting more views than this. And we've mentioned a few times, but, you know, what are you going to do? We don't really have the same audience, and I think they'd have a lot less patience for this kind of rambly kind of discussion. But
yeah, although we have been doing our level best to make those recap videos as rambly as possible. It's not for lack of trying.
Yeah, so I don't know if you remember, I had the first account that I had on Injustice where from scratch, where I grinded like, I don't know, like there's
like
gotta be an
crazy.
analogy. It's not so much like crazy, but like a mill, you know, that grinds flour.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I just vomited a little bit.
You're on that grind like a Instagram influencer.
Yeah, and that was the first and only time that I have had an account suspended unintentionally.
Yeah, that you weren't like testing the limits of.
Right. So all the time, I mean, we do these glitches, we do lots of stuff, we test stuff. I mean, we used to test a lot more when we had maybe more time and there was more question about what was worth doing or not.
Yeah.
But that was the first time I had ever lost an account to suspension.
Oh yeah, and that was so frustrating.
It was either the first Ares or first Cassandra Cain season. I had one device that was running low on battery, and so I switched to the other one without logging out.
Yeah.
Totally forgot, logged in, and back then the suspensions came faster, and I was banned from that account immediately. And it's since then. And listen, I get there's probably lots of glitches that you can do that involve being logged into the same account on two devices. Mm-hmm. But since then, that's not the sort of thing that I think is worth testing, especially now that they don't ban immediately. Like, it seems like they
don't ban immediately and they don't unban ever.
Yeah, it's like a 24-hour cycle, right? It seems like where you do something that's in contravention of their rules, it won't ban you right away. It might even be the end of the season, but without that immediate feedback, sometimes it's far enough that you can lose track of it and forget what you did.
Yeah.
And I do not want, like, if we're going to be endorsing a glitch or promoting it, I need to have the confidence that you can protect yourself or even walk back from it.
And just like we said for a lot of glitches, it's always much more important to not get banned than it is to make use of any one glitch. And this is one of those things that we've had enough personal negative experience with that we are not looking to get banned. And even if that doesn't happen, there's a chance that it doesn't happen. There's been people who've been talking about it for a while, and we haven't gotten a lot of follow-ups of people saying, hey, I'm banned, right?
Yeah.
So, that's obviously not what I would call meaningful evidence. That's not enough evidence for me to change my opinion on it. But it seems like it might be okay. The problem is, at the end of the day, it's just not worth that risk for us.
Yes, exactly.
Regardless of anything else, even if it would work. And I think part of it too is that maybe we're in a place of a little bit of privilege where we don't actually need glitches for credits that bad.
Right.
Just
so
for the way that we've stockpiled.
And we've always been careful, but it's got to be something meaningful, because it's not like I ever want to give up on the game like that. Like, I know there's some people who watch this and just want to cheat and hack or whatever, get to wherever they need to be and play around with it, because they want to get to that sandbox style of play where they try different things.
Yeah.
Instead of the grindy part of the game.
And then also to be able to give up the game more easily once you're done with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's... I remember before the main glitches, there were times where I felt like the grind was just too much, and I was almost looking... when you sort of sabotage yourself, and you're almost looking for a way to give up on the game, but
that was like you with Injustice 2 when you got banned, and you're like, I don't know why, but I'm gonna request an unban, and if it doesn't happen, I'm just done, and that's fine. I honestly don't care either way.
Yeah, that was it. So all right, so I want to talk a little bit about what I've been watching lately.
Yeah, sure. Let's do it.
Okay. So, there might be... It's a little bit spoilery. I don't think it is entirely. I'm going to try to avoid spoilers for the show that
Netflix show You.
Yeah.
So, if you haven't seen it yet, or not Netflix quite, you might have seen it as original air on, I think, Showtime or whatever it is. But there's going to be minor spoilers. This was the way that it was spoilered for me, and I actually hold that it was a good kind of spoiler, because there's spoilers that remove tension. Yeah. And so they're like, oh, I know what's going to happen. And then there's spoilers that add tension, where you know approximately what's going to happen. You don't know how you get from point A to point B, and you're excited and kind of on edge to see when it's going to happen and why.
Okay, so John Green, who's an author who wrote The Fault in Our Stars and a few other really great young adult novels, he talked about that, where he says anticipation is better than surprise. So that anticipation is what you're talking about, where you're creating tension because you sort of know what's going to happen. You know the flavor of it, but you don't know the details.
Yeah, because the elevator pitch of You is that he's a stalker, and he's a stalker for love, or his own sort of definition of love. I think you could argue,
right?
If it is exactly what he says it is, but he's stalking a girl to try to win her over,
right?
And the spoiler that I got is that he goes to some really sort of incredible lengths, including and this is the spoiler murder for it.
Oh.
So there's a body count to his romantic affection.
All right, so this is what's interesting to me, and why there's things I liked about it, things I didn't like so much about it, but what I really liked about it, and I can compare this to another show that gives you that internal dialogue where there's, in our own lives, I mean, it's the whole Descartes thing, right? I think, therefore I am, and you don't know anything else that's happening in anybody else's mind. You only know what's in your own.
Yeah.
So it's your thought process that actually proves existence, right? So most of the time we don't have access to that. And you can say that you do a little bit when you talk to people, but people only tell you as much as they want to.
Yeah.
As much as they need to give you the impression that they are who they want you to see.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to me because it's very much like Dexter, where you've got somebody who's got this really interesting internal dialogue that enhances the whole experience of watching. Yeah, what they're doing, right?
Yeah, whether or not you agree with them, because I think in both these cases you're not supposed to agree with them, really.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. But it's all right. So George R. R. Martin does this beautifully in his whole Game of Thrones series, right?
Yeah.
Because he goes through, I can't remember whether it's first person or it's third person omniscient, but he gives you the perspectives of all these different characters that some seem more sympathetic than others.
Yeah.
But when you get into their heads, you can appreciate more where they're coming from. It's not like I want to go and stalk somebody now, but it's interesting that they're giving you this whole internal dialogue
Yeah.
that makes them so much more real.
And because you're talking about identification. That's one of the funny things is that, for however much you hate the character of Joe and think he's creepy in the Netflix series You, the actor who had to play him hates him much more. So he has some issues actually with people seemingly identifying with him. Like he's like a little uncomfortable by people identifying with the character, and like kind of worried and hyper aware of trying to be too relatable as this really creepy character, and to try to like actually get some people into a place where they can understand or forgive some of his actions based off of his motivation.
But those kind of creepy people are actually the most dangerous, right? Because if there's creepy people that look creepy and are easy to identify, so you can stay away from the danger, they're actually, they might seem worse, but they're not. They're not the dangerous ones. The dangerous ones are the ones that can actually not set off your alarms, not set off your spidey sense, and have more access to you.
That's totally true. And I think one thing that's interesting just watching, I've only watched one episode of Dexter so far, and you can tell me if this remains true for the rest of the series. I think You, in a lot of ways, is a little bit more, it feels a little more kind of polished and just like immediately compelling, just from the setup.
Which, You or Dexter?
You. I think Dexter...
I'm trying to remember. Yeah, it's been a long time since I've seen Dexter.
Just from having watched the first episode of Dexter, it didn't immediately grab me the same way that You immediately grabbed me. And I like, it's definitely, and by the same way, I mean they both immediately grabbed me. I shouldn't say Dexter is a bad show, because they're both really interesting. But just having watched both of them, I felt myself more drawn into You from an earlier point. And I think there's a lot of kind of really close parallels, and I can't talk about them too much without kind of giving stuff away. But I think there's, what's the easiest non-spoiler way that I can draw parallels? There's parallels if you've seen Dexter, or should I...
Oh, but but I think, is it a spoiler to say that when there's a lot of dramatic irony there, where we know as the audience so much more than the people around them know?
Oh no, that's not a spoiler at all. And I'm trying to... I think there's parallels with Mooney and something from Dexter, and I don't want to actually say what it is from Dexter that is the parallel, because I think that's too much of a spoiler, but I think that's a kind of reasonable thing, and I think it's probably reasonable to expect more people to have seen You.
So here's the thing, though. Actually, it's probably more reasonable to expect people to have seen Dexter, because You came into the world that had Dexter, I don't know, like 10 years ago?
That's true.
So it's almost like it's in dialogue with it, because there's a lot of parallels that you can draw.
Yeah.
I mean, they're totally different characters, but it's that same kind of...
Again, it's the same internal monologue, a little bit messed up. Definitely like a sort of distorted sense of the world, right? But in their own ways, you can understand where they're coming from, even if you can't understand how they're getting from point A to point B. You can understand the little jumps that they're making, right?
Yeah.
To get them to where they are. I think one of the things is, in You, he is made to be less understandable. His motives are a little bit less
they're more opaque,
noble.
Yeah.
But he's also...
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt just now, because that was a pretty spectacular fight to finish in 21 seconds against a Red Sun Green Lantern team where crit doesn't happen. That was actually pretty good. Sorry, go ahead.
So I think he's less kind of understandable and forgivable from a motivation perspective. But I think just from a pure character-driven perspective, he's more likable. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I think he's actually just more charismatic than Dexter is, Joe from You. Even if at the end of the day he's a lot less it's a lot harder to empathize with him, and his behavior is a lot harder to kind of forgive.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely not the same guy.
Yeah,
but I like both shows a lot.
Mm-hmm. I think they're really interesting.
They're not my favorite shows.
Oh, that's,
you know what I mean?
You've had that.
There's this distinction, right, between you can enjoy a show and think that it does something really well, and you can it's very evocative, right? But it doesn't necessarily mean that it's, there's a difference when you love a show and it's your favorite show of all time, because then there has to be a lot more. In my mind, when I love something a lot, it's because I identify really deeply with some of the things that happen in it.
Yeah, and so it's harder to do that in a show where it's mostly awful things happening, and the people that you spend the most time with aren't people that you should want to identify with at all.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like you were talking about that with Breaking Bad, right? Because I think that's a sentiment that's been expressed online. I think that we were discussing, and you haven't watched Breaking Bad, but you have watched Better Call Saul.
And I know enough. My problem is, even when I don't watch stuff, I feel like I stay connected enough that even the stuff I don't watch, I have an idea of what it's about.
Yeah. And Better Call Saul is really an amazing show, isn't it?
It is.
It's incredible.
I love Better Call Saul.
I like it a lot better. Having watched both Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, I find it a lot more compelling than Breaking Bad.
And it's partly your opinion why I've decided that I don't plan on watching Breaking Bad unless I have a lot of free time and I've got nothing else to do.
Yeah.
Because I don't really want to watch that kind of decline.
Yeah, but I think Better Call Saul is supposed to represent a different sort of decline too.
Right.
But its own sort of trajectory, and because you know the kind of end point, especially if you watch Breaking Bad, you understand kind of what the trajectory looks like.
But there's a limit to it, right?
Yeah.
Like you know it's not going to go beyond that, and I guess part of
exactly you know exactly where it's going to end up.
Right. See, this is the reason why. I mean, it used to be a bit of a guilty pleasure. I used to watch. Well, I still watch Survivor, and I used to watch Big Brother. So that kind of. It's not really reality. They call it reality TV, but it's mostly unscripted, right?
Yeah.
And, all right, so this is kind of funny. I hope you don't mind I'm going to tell this story. But when you were born, it was during, there were the Olympics on, and there was Big Brother on.
Yeah.
So there were times when you were waking up and at any given hour, so we'd watch whatever was on TV at the time. Mm-hmm. And what I really liked about Big Brother is that it gives you that, it shows you that difference between how people want to present to other people when they're around.
Yeah.
How they want the stories that they tell about themselves when they want you to believe certain things that they do, whether it's actually true or not.
Yeah.
And then if you get to see them at really unguarded moments, sometimes you get even more of an idea of what their intentions are.
Mm.
So it's interesting to me because that's a kind of understanding of human behavior that you don't always get, because I think when people have the chance to tell you what they think about themselves or what they think you want to hear.
In those asides, right? Those asides are really kind of perfectly poised to be kind of not analogous, homologous to like internal monologues.
Yeah. And even then, it's a bit of a lie because they're talking to the camera.
Yeah. And
there's a camera person asking them questions when they do that, even if they edit out the questions, right?
Yeah.
But
it's like Her Story.
Yes, but it's also
we're drawing a lot of parallels here.
Okay, but that's what makes it so great, because very rarely do you get a chance to have all those kind of three aspects and be able to put them together to get a feel for what people are like. And it's not everybody, but it's those kind of people, right? Those specific people that happen to be on the show.
Yeah.
Because there's been lots of stories, right, where they've done that, where they've taken a famous story and retold it from somebody else's perspective.
Oh, to try to kind of like flip the tail on its head.
Right. So there was Wicked, the musical, was based on Wizard of Oz, and it was a Gregory Maguire, and he's done it a couple times with some other stories. I can't remember which ones now, but he's done it a couple times. Not even a couple times. Like, he's done a series of books like Wicked, where instead of being from the perspective of Dorothy, who's the hero, it's, the witches.
There was that one about the wolf. That was like, it was like a Little Red Riding Hood one. It's like one of those like tongue-in-cheek kids stories where it's supposed to be like Little Red Riding Hood from the perspective of the wolf.
Oh, okay.
And the wolf is like, that Little Red Riding Hood always foiling my plans. Like, it's one of those things, right?
Yeah.
Or it's like the DreamWorks movie Megamind. Right? Oh! Isn't that I think it was like Will Ferrell or something?
Okay.
Yeah, who was the big dude with the alien with the massive blue head?
Yes. Now that's not necessarily nearly as established as some of the other stuff we're talking about. Like, there was somebody that did redid one of the Shakespeare stories as Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead.
Not familiar with that.
Okay, but to me, what's really cool about it is the same way that other kinds of structured entertainment, structured media, like, all right, so what they're doing is they're fitting a brand new story, but within
an old framework.
Yeah, so it's really narrow, whether it's an old story or even history. Like, that's what Tim Powers does amazingly. He takes a framework of history and fits in a story that takes into account all these other things that are happening and gives it a different perspective.
Oh, it's like, this is not what the kind of main conceit of the book is, but it's like Hyperion, where I think it's the second book. It's in either Fall of Hyperion or one of the Endymion books, where there's actually like a really, really good religious allegory, and they fit the actual narrative of the story, and they use it to recontextualize something that Jesus did as actually a totally different thing from what like organized religion thought it was, but like actually, like they gave motivation. I don't know if you remember what I'm talking about. I couldn't explain it without it being a spoiler.
So yeah, maybe not. But he definitely did that.
They recontextualized communion.
Yes, that's right.
In a really interesting way.
I remember that.
And I was like, oh, okay, that's cool.
But he even did it in a more plot-driven way with the first two books, where but
that's almost like self-mythologizing, like doing it to your own story.
Yeah, that's true. But it's cool because it makes you... I love books where it makes you look back on it and think, oh, this is what I was looking at.
That's not almost self-mythologizing. I think the plot of the later books actually is pretty explicitly self-mythologizing.
Yes.
So I say almost, but it's actually pretty direct and explicit.
Yeah, Hyperion was a brilliant... I remember... All right, so here's the thing. I remember 1989, I want to say, and 3 books came out that changed my life. Like, literally changed my life. It was Hyperion.
Can I guess what one of the other ones was?
What?
It was Phases of Gravity.
Yes.
And
Carrying Comfort.
Oh, were they all... Okay.
He published all of those, I believe, unless memory fails me. He published all of those in the same year. And he didn't write them all in the same year, but he published them all in the same year. And they were absolutely, like, brilliant. And it blew my mind that he was able to write in so many different genres so effectively. And that's when I went back and I read Song of Kali, and I've been following him ever since.
Broken Stones, the short story anthology.
Yes, that would have been maybe the year after. And that was the deep descent into small press books. Because Prayers for Broken Stones came out from Dark Harvest Books, and it was not widely available. You couldn't get it in a regular bookstore. You'd actually have to special order it or get it from a specialty bookstore. And that was my, that was sort of the first step.
Catalyst.
In a bad way, because then that's when I started looking for, like, these small press books are expensive. They have neat features, whether it's because they're fully cloth bound and stuff. Like books now, a lot of them have paper, even the hardcovers, right? It's paper. But the really nice books, they're bound in cloth or maybe leather, and the binding is sewn, and a lot of times they have the author signs it. Maybe it's a limited edition. So it's a big hit on the wallet. Like, it's just
it's an expensive hobby.
It is, and I almost wish I hadn't discovered that so young. But
you should have discovered it when you had a little bit more disposable income.
And yeah, so because all right, so here's the problem, right? It's like
and a little bit too much stuff already, but a little bit too much cheaper stuff filling up all your space.
I saw you look around because right now, all right. So for people who can't see us, obviously,
so you mean for everybody?
Everybody, we're in the den, and the den has 1, 2, 3, 4 full size bookshelves, and they're mostly double stacked. So there's a layer behind and a layer in front of mostly hardcover books, and this is the room where I keep the stuff that's the important stuff, where I think there's value. Like, after I've read it, I think, man, that was good.
And also the box for Tamagotchi ripoff, Digimon branded.
Oh, there's a I think that might have come up first, actually, where you could fight with them, so you weren't just raising them. I think the Digimon actually came out first.
Okay, so never mind, it's not a Tamagotchi ripoff, it's a Tamagotchi progenitor.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
So the idea is that...
Make sure you're not facing too far away from the mic while you're talking.
Oh, that's true.
You're looking out on the bookshelves with...
Yeah. How did we get on this?
I don't know. Does it matter?
Oh, Dan Simmons. So so I've been buying his books ever since. And he's had a really cool run where he's written, like, really it's hard to believe that he's been as consistently good for so many years. So yeah, I've got a few of his the original hardcovers. I've got a hardcover copy of Carrying Comfort when it first came out.
I can see a soft cover of Carrying Comfort from here.
Oh yeah, that's the reading copy. So sometimes when I'm at a used bookstore, sometimes I'll pick stuff up. So because when you ask somebody to say watch a show or read a book or whatever,
you got to give them the book,
or they won't read it. Like unless they're really big readers, there's a good chance that they're never gonna get to it, right? And when you really want to share it, like when you're an actual fan and not just like a poser. What's the word for it? When
I don't know.
Hipster.
Well, but hipsters are fans, sort of.
Well, sort of, but to hipster, it's more important that they were there first, and that
hipsters are a specific type of fan. You're sort of
So I want to make sure that when I can recommend it to somebody, I can just put it in their hand and they can get started on it.
Yeah, so that's a lending copy.
That's right. So
that's how you can tell we're nerds. If the fact that you're on an Injustice YouTube channel that somehow spends most of its time talking about left-wing politics instead of injustice wasn't enough of an indication for you. We also have lending copies for books.
So this fight is going to be interesting because what I try to do is when there's the Green Lantern there with the shield that triggers at, I think, 10%, is that the John Stewart Green Lantern. What I'm trying to do is bypass that, and because if you hit the shield, it's like the Astro Harness, it slows down the fight a lot. I don't think we're going to lose this fight, but I'm more likely to use a special one from Bane, even though there won't be any splash damage, or even special one from Batgirl. And because he's got the Astro Harness, that's actually going to make it worse, but we're just going to wait this out and try to break through his all the shields.
Apologies to all 15 of you listening to this on podcast format.
That happened. All right, so that was good. Okay, so
the play-by-play for I'm sure all 15 to 20 of you are very confused right now.
Yeah, but see, all right, perfect. And so this first is probably enough because Batgirl softened her enough. All right, so that was actually pretty quick.
Okay.
So I think that's we started off on talking about you. So
it would be disingenuous for us to say that we had a point that we're trying to make.
No, I just want to say that I really enjoyed you. I hope you like Dexter because that's just something we've been doing lately. We've been watching shows because you got reading week from university.
Yeah, and I'm prepping for 2 midterms currently.
Oh, which ones?
Chemistry and psych.
Okay. And you're prepared? You still got a lot of work to do?
I mean, it's early in reading week, so I'm still got a lot of work to do, but it would be weird if I was prepared now. I would have put in too much work too early.
Oh, you mean like a race where you've tuckered yourself?
Yeah, I would not be pacing myself if I didn't have a lot of work to do still. All
right, so maybe we need to wrap this up not too late.
Yeah,
to give you a chance to do a bit more work.
Maybe we can finish on this question.
Well, there's a couple.
Yeah, you're right. There's a couple.
I can do this one fast. I can do the... Yeah, I can do it.
Okay, this one comes from Barry Allen, and they say, hey guys, what's the best gear for Injustice 2 Superman and Flashpoint Batman?
That's what we're assuming. It says FPB.
Yeah. Well, who else could it be?
I never know, because sometimes, because now... I always think I know.
Yeah.
And then somebody comes up with another initials that ends up being somebody else.
That's true. I'm glad that I'm not the only person who has trouble with initials, because every time I run into them, there's always sort of like a scramble for me to try to mentally process it when I'm reading comments.
So the real answer is that it always depends on what you want to do with them. And I guess what's cool is, at least with Flashpoint Batman, we've done a series of videos on specifically Flashpoint Batman, and we'll link to that in the description and try to link it in the top right corner if I can remember where in the video we actually answer this. But we've done a series of videos with him using him as a basic damage dealer, then as a tank, and then as a special specialist, and the only difference is gear.
Yeah. So we'll link that down in the description. You can go ahead and check that out.
Yeah, and the other thing is, I guess with Injustice 2 Superman, my general attitude is I avoid making somebody well-rounded because it usually comes at a cost. If you make them really good for all 3 different things, right? To me, special specialist, a basic damage dealer, and tank.
They can't be great at anything.
Right, but...
Unless they start out pretty good.
Yeah, Superman is interesting because he's got a passive that gives him really tanky abilities and good as a basic damage dealer and as a special specialist.
Just because of his stats, really.
He's got great stats. He's got the shield that refreshes every time he tags in, that you can decide when to use by blocking and keeping the shield and taking damage, or just eating it, a special, and not taking anything.
Yeah.
But he's also got the passive that boosts his health and his attack based on how many promotions he's got. So his passive makes him well-rounded, and you could load him whichever way you want, and he'd still be good in other domains. So, yeah, I think Injustice 2 Superman, it's same idea though as Flashpoint Batman.
Yeah.
Figure out what you want to do, and then gear him the way you want to.
So there we go.
And we've got one more from, is it
Awesomegamer 241, and they say, I've lost motivation for this game. Do you know how to get it back? Maybe?
Yeah, well, I guess the short answer is don't try.
Yeah.
It's the kind of game, I think, where, I mean, the grinding, the full on grind where you're trying to get a team good enough that the playing part is as fun as the rest of it is hard.
And it's unsustainable.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, playing now looks way different than it did how many years ago when we first started.
Oh, so, yeah, it's not even the same game, really.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is that, you know, I think everybody's time with a game comes at one time or another, right? So I think one of the problems is there's not a lot keeping you here, right now, just in terms of new content, right? So, I mean, what keeps us motivated is always getting rewards. And, I mean, the real thing that's keeping us motivated at this point is the YouTube channel, more than I think any other one individual thing.
I mean, I don't play nearly as much as I used to.
Yeah. So, I mean, you do other stuff. I think one of the ways that you keep yourself motivated is to not burn yourself out and not make yourself feel like you're wasting time. So, I mean, if I watched our videos, the way that I keep myself motivated is to cut back a lot, watch or, you know, skip through the recap to figure out what it is that is still going on with the game, right? Spend that 10 minutes a week to sort of keep abreast of the content.
That's a perfect point, actually. I mean, that's part of the reason I thought a lot of times when we're planning these videos, we think, what would we want to see?
Yeah.
And I think the recap is useful for exactly that reason.
If we watched our own videos, that's what I would want from the channel.
Right. So you know what's happening, and you know whether it's worth putting in the time this week.
Yeah.
The longest time, we didn't actually do recap videos because our schedule didn't allow it, and I think we realized at some point that the value was there. It was worth doing, and this kind of thing that I always joked at the beginning, I wouldn't watch our own videos.
Yeah.
But the recap, I think I would be interested in. And I think the part that I'd actually want to watch the most, and maybe it's because we're spoiled from having had the glitches for so long, is the
content.
Yeah, what's changing in the game? What's happening this week in the game? Because then I know whether it was worth trying to get the challenge character or get the multiplayer reward.
And so, I mean, like, do other stuff, right? Like, we watch TV, right? Netflix is great, you know, I think the problem is that if you relied too much on Injustice or any one thing to be your kind of source of entertainment, there's a decent chance of getting burnt out. So, I mean, you know, try to remember what it is you like, and then maybe there's a lot of stuff, depending on how much stuff you have in the game, too. There's a lot of way that you can kind of figure stuff out. You can set personal challenges for yourself. You can see how little gear you can put on high stat teams.
We did that for a while.
Yeah, because that can be kind of interesting. You can try to see what the furthest you can get in single player with an only bronze team is.
And that's why I think the danger of going to glitches or cheating too early, I mean, clearly we're not biased against them. We don't have a thing against them. But if you go to it too early, then...
Well, we do have a thing a little bit against hacking.
Well, hacking is different than glitching, I think. And we've talked about that before, but is that you don't appreciate the other characters that you've got, so you're less likely, I think, to play around with some of the really low-level teams like we have, and to mess around with the other gears like we have.
Yeah.
So there's not as long a life potential, or whatever, how long the game is for you, if you only play with certain of the high-level characters and the high-level gears.
Yeah, so that's what I would say, is that, like, one of the things just within the game is set restrictions for yourself. Put yourself in positions where the fights are going to be harder, and see if you can succeed.
And I think the biggest thing still comes back to the original point of, don't fight it. If you're tired of it, don't make it a chore. If you just feel like you need to, just let it go. It'll still be here.
Yeah, you don't
Until
need
it's not.
you don't if you're putting in a work to enjoy it, then you can find something that the joy comes a little more naturally from.
Yeah.
But I know that Awesomegamer 241 has been with us for a while, so I'd be sad to see them go just from a sort of personal perspective.
Yeah.
Gotta have that engagement, but really, I think at the end of the day, yeah, there's stuff that you can try, but if it doesn't work, you gotta do what you gotta do. Chase your bliss. Yes. It's a very millennial sort of answer to that question.
Oh, I want to talk about. We're out of time. Our other fights are out, so I want to talk about that next time. Maybe about millennials.
Okay.
What's interesting. Okay, so all right.
Okay.
So now we get to the end of our video where.
Oh yeah. Oh, I let my phone go to sleep. Oh. Sorry, give me a second. We gotta plug ourselves. So, and that's a weird verbiage.
No,
we have to advertise ourselves. Patreon.com/BDCKR or clicking our picture in the bottom right corner at the end of this video will bring you to our Patreon page where you can become a patron and support us if you so choose. But more important than asking new people to support us is giving our thanks to the people who have already made that decision with us. And we've gotten this week another message from iProphet, who is using his Your Message Here tier reward to great effect. This is a segment that I like to call his Palace of Puns. And so the joke is as follows. Why did Elektra ask out Daredevil?
Why did Elektra ask out Daredevil?
She likes blind dates.
Oh.
It's a little... Yeah.
Because she dated Matt Murdock too, I think.
Oh no, I don't know.
Because Daredevil doesn't present as blind, but Matt Murdock does.
Oh.
Or did she? I can't remember.
No,
all of it.
iProphet did when sending this say this is a little late and a little dark. So
yes, okay.
There you go. But a huge thank you to all of our patrons. So that's Console Peasant. Let me say that one more time for posterity because they deserve me actually pronouncing their name properly. Eddy G and Edwin Felix, who are all supporting us at the highest last word tier. iProphet, that's iProphet3 on YouTube, who is supporting us at the Your Message Here tier. And Shawn, Farrell, and Daniel Simonson, who are supporting us on the credited level. Thank you guys so much, and thanks so much to all of you for watching and or listening. We will see you guys next time.
Komoda.